Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining today on this discussion, the power of network data and what it can do for your organization. I'm really excited because we've got a terrific panel here today. And I'll start with the first slide, which is this notion that we're moving to a world dominated by the infinite enterprise. And that's really about, work is no longer a location, it's an activity. How you engage is no longer a location, it's an activity. And over the last 15 months, we've gone from a world where it was largely physical and it was supplemented digitally to almost overnight became completely digital, and where possible, it was physical. And now we're going to get back to the new normal or the next normal or whatever you'd like to call it. But it's really the balance between these two worlds. And some things are forever changed. The notion of how we work, the notion of how we travel, distance learning, telemedicine, these things have forever changed based on what's happened in the last 15 months. And so it's pretty compelling. And why that's compelling is, under the next slide, is they're really driven by three big macro kind of tectonic technology shifts. The first being the move to the cloud and what that delivers in terms of just endless possibilities and ease of deployment capabilities, whether it's public, private, multi-cloud. Data and the access to data and insights from data. And data is the new oil, is what we often talk about it inside Extreme. And then finally, mobility, unlike ever before, the ability to drive new applications, new devices, leverage them in new ways, 5G, Wi-Fi V6, UWB, all these things have really combined to create a lot of new opportunities. And it's the intersection of these opportunities that really connect and drive the discussion we're going to have today around network data. And so the next slide, this statement couldn't be more true. Better insights drive better results. If you've got better data and you leverage it better than your peers, you're going to be more successful. And that can be driving the top line. I'll give a quick example. We do a lot in the stadium space. One of our ballpark clients figured out that a lot of their guests were logging on and going to a website called Wayfair. And what they realized was it was the spouse who was planning for their next remodel or the next kitchen table or what have you. And they started doing promotions around Wayfair that helped draw a whole new crowd into the ballpark. Another stadium realized that they've got a whole lot of folks that were going to a dating site called Bumble. And they started doing singles promotions around their stadium and actually attracted Bumble as a sponsor for this. So opened up completely new revenue streams previously unforeseen by those venues. The other dimension when you think about data and how you use it is driving operating efficiency. I'll give you a quick but relevant example. If you're a hospital, all of a sudden you see network data traffic spike in your admission area, you shouldn't have to go in and go into some application workflow to move things around. It should say, hey, guest traffic on our network is up 30%. Maybe we need some more doctors, some more nurses, some more medical devices. Maybe I need to send a cleaning crew down to the admission area. Maybe I need to send another security person or some more welcome support down to the admission area. And then when you think in terms of reducing risk, this can be as simple as just occupancy management data. We have great telemetry data now, getting better by the minute. So how far apart do I need to keep people? How do I make sure I've got the right number of security support for a given organization or given site? How do I make sure I've got the right number of staffing support if I'm a retail entity? So that whole element of reducing risk is a key component. And then finally, what does this all add up to? It adds up to a better customer experience, patient experience, student experience, constituent experience. 10 years ago, we were all awed by the notion of Disney's Magic Band. Well, this is the Magic Band on steroids. This is the world we're entering into, and it's all available to us. And to talk about that, we have the most incredible panel here today. Our first guest is Brenda Dunn Kinney, and she is a consultant to kind of mid and large size enterprises on the whole topic of customer experience. So when somebody's going through a whole customer experience transformation or digital transformation using tools like ServiceNow, she's actually right there with them, with their C-suite, and how they go through this and make sure that investment in software pays off on the other end, and they really make sure they get the full value from it. And so she'll be a great addition to our panel. Our next guest is Mike Mathews. And if you're a basketball fan, you would have witnessed Oral Roberts University this recent spring, because Oral Roberts was one of the darlings of the tournament. But what Mike has got going on at Oral Roberts is pretty amazing. They're helping develop the next generation of leaders as students today with AI, ML, robotics insights, and how do they span this physical and digital world together? And you'll be really impressed to hear from Mike. And our last guest today is Camille Mendler. And Camille is with Omdia, and she was one of the early thought leaders in terms of the power of network data and how you unlock it to do more things. And so she's got expertise that spans 5G and Wi-Fi and service provider and enterprise, but she's really thoughtful in terms of how organizations can unlock this to do more than they ever could before. So we'll finish up with my colleague Jeevan, who's going to join us and talk about what does this mean on Monday. And if you're an Extreme customer or you're thinking about becoming an Extreme customer, what do you do? Where do you go? How do you get started? And Jeevan will follow our incredible panel to get us going. So I'm going to start with our first question, which is, how should organizations think about leveraging network data to aid their performance? And like I said, this is a pretty important question because companies spend millions on software, but they don't really think about how do they unlock and power that software with the right business insights. So I'm going to start a discussion today, and I'm going to throw it to Mike, and after Mike, we'll go to Camille and to Brenda. So Mike, I'm really interested in your perspective.
Sure. Thank you so much, Wes. What a privilege to be on this panel today. You know, one of the things that we learned at Oral Roberts University is the network is the power of the computing, right? However, one of the things that we did was stop focusing on analytics, devices, and things and focused on people. And because it's really the people we want to empower, not the devices, not the network. That's already empowered. I mean, technology has become a commodity, and we're extremely thankful for the Extreme networks that allowed us to do everything we've done in the last 7 years. And so we've developed something called Humanware. And that means that we can take the endpoint of the network, such as the transaction system, and tell every student, every college, every professor, every dean, how much soy milk they drink for anyone who scores more than 3.0 on a final exam. We can tell you how many pieces of bacon I ate last week. Why? Because the network allows us access to that transaction. But if we put that in the power of the students, they can start learning their sleep patterns, their grit patterns, their what we would call years ago biorhythms, all because of the data. So every semester we're processing 23 trillion transactions on the network. And it's worked flawlessly for 7 years, and that we give thanks to Extreme. However, we need to figure out how to turn it into Humanware so that students know how much the data means to them, not how much it means to me as the CIO. And so my job as a CIO has changed 5 years ago, and that is to help people survive and thrive in a digital world. We all find ourselves in a digital world, but who can thrive in it? And that's what I believe Humanware touches. In fact, we've all named technology 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, but we forgot about civilization 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. And so we're on record everywhere, United Nations, the White House, as knowing that we care about people more than we do about technology, but we know if we care about people more than technology, we'll leverage the technology. So our students now know, after 50 years of saying it, it's now scientifically proven that if a student walks between 10,000 steps a day and 12,000 steps a day, they score 2 GPA points higher than a person walking less than 7,500 steps. Every student at ORU gets a Fitbit watch. Why? So they can help themselves, not so we can monitor or anything of the sort. So our students are the only students in the world that can sit in a class now and see if they've got cognitive load happening. Everyone else is sitting watching and see if a student's nodding their head. They get to the final exam and they find out it's too late. They didn't learn. What we can do is we can measure the heart rate. The student does it themselves. If your heart rate goes up 4 percentage points, you've got cognitive load happening. The network's doing its job, of course. All the learning management system, the student information system's doing their job, but more importantly, the student gets to monitor themselves. So we put the data in the power of the student's hands, and we're calling it Humanware. So we've never been more thankful for the network, the endpoints, but now we can understand how to help people and how they can help themselves.
That's pretty compelling. Wow, a completely different way to think about it. And you're right, it begins with humans first. Camille, you've talked about this topic and really about unlocking the value of network data as well, and beyond the applications and devices that people connect with it. I'm interested in your take on this topic of how organizations should think about leveraging this information.
I think we need to be honest with each other and say that in many organizations, we've got a love-hate relationship with data. At some point, we wanted data, we had a thirst for data. Then we had an overload of data and it became noise. And I think we need to sort of re-engage with what data can be. And I think also a lot of it starts in the IT departments of many organizations. Think about how they're spending their time. I think still 70% of their time is actually very reactive. It's reacting to things that have gone wrong. It's doing moves, adds, and changes. It's not controlling data. It's actually reacting to data. And we need to become more proactive. And not only that, I think the real goal is to be predictive if you really get it right. And the shocking thing to me, and I just did some work on this, is that 80% of organizations that I surveyed, actually in Europe in this case, but I think the same applies in North America, did not have a full integrated view of the networking services they had on a single platform. So they have to hunt and peck for data in a number of different places. So how can you be proactive? How can you be predictive in that type of situation? And let alone thinking about other forms of data that could be integrated and should be integrated into the real world that we operate in. It's not a reactive world, it's a real-time world. So I've gotten on my hobby horse.
No, that's pretty amazing. I mean, it is, data they don't even know they have access to, and how to take advantage of that. Brenda, I'm sure you see this as well. I mean, gosh, you consult to a lot of big clients of all sorts and types, and how to knit these systems together. And give us a practical view from your seat on what you see and how organizations should think about leveraging insights from the network to deliver a better customer, patient, student experience.
Wow, it's amazing. I mean, I'm listening to Camille, I'm listening to Michael, and I'm saying yes, yes, yes. But you know what I think is really missing, and I'm watching it all over the globe. People are making statements, but there is no truth associated with it. The best qualitative research is always proved, right? So we have all those points, and it's about the reporting now. And it's understanding where is that information coming from, being able to say to somebody who's analyzing it, it's coming from here, not, well, I don't know, Susie built that 10 years ago, and I know it's important, we can't cut that off. Well, we need to do a better job at the very beginning with the human capital and really understanding whether or not, I mean, sometimes I'm not the good guy or the good girl, right? I have to say to the CEO, I think we need to realign the organization. We don't have enough digital mavens to get us over that hill. And so it starts with reviewing the people. Then we walk into the road mapping and we identify the lay of the land. And then we show the picture and we all agree or disagree and we move things around. Then we work into the workflows, which is really important. Because if you miss, it might look like a very minute workflow, but it's like your body. If it's a small little rice kernel, it might be the most important traffic cop in the whole reporting process, right? So getting a handle on all that stuff in the very beginning, making sure that you're utilizing your people properly, that you're planning on with great training and great experience to get them where they need to be. But then more importantly, at the back end, that when the tool is purchased or the software solution, that it really fits the dynamics of where the change and the organization is being developed to. And if it isn't there yet, they need to slow down to catch up, right, from an education perspective. But the reporting is key. I see very little understanding, and we all say AI, we all say business intelligence, all these things, but truly it's all unique to the organization.
Yeah, that's great insight. My next question for the panel is going to be, what steps should users take to get started? And I'll start with you, Brenda, because you've answered that, which is do the homework up front, make sure you know what the outcome you hope for, and build from there. I don't know if I paraphrase that, but I think that's essentially what I heard you say.
Yeah, it's like, here's a great example, especially around patient experience, because there's no tolerance in the insurance companies anymore for doing double pay on things that they should have corrected the first time through. So it's the same thing with student experience. When you have an online student or you have an online patient in the portal, you need to engage them early on. You need to help them through the process. You need to monitor. And many of the self-serving modalities that are in those experiences are just FAQs. They're not interactive enough. they're not smart enough. The sentiment is not quite clearly all there in the tools that they're purchasing. So you may get through the enrollment piece, the registration on site doesn't match up. I just had this experience yesterday. I had to go in for a pre-COVID test, and it was such a mess because I'm going to the University of Chicago for the surgery, but the place I went to for the COVID test didn't like that I was going there for the surgery. Nobody's working together for the greater good of me, right? So I just feel like when we solve that problem, the problem solving methodologies are there and the workflows are there, but it's getting people to think beyond their everyday normal grind. It's getting more innovation. Maybe we need to, Wes, you and I were talking about this and did this back in days where we worked together before, where you take those people out of the culture of the day-to-day, you move them into an environment, a laboratory, where you can start incubating and bringing them back gradually or rotating them in and out so that you make sure that you get that consistency. So I've seen that work really positively.
100%. Hey, Mike, I'm going to ask you, when you think about your environment or, the other folks that are doing this and certainly at universities or K through 12 or government, all these are being reimagined. You're in the middle of all that. What steps, how do you start taking advantage of telemetry data, network data, insights in terms of how people are using applications and devices and interacting with the network? How do you talk to your colleagues and peers about getting started? What advice do you have for them?
My advice is always simplify, simplify, simplify. And so imagine any worker going into a workplace, no matter where it's at, and having your lights out. And you would automatically tell them, hey, you can get more done if you turn the lights on. That same concept is so true about the infrastructure of a network and all the electronics today. If that network is not functioning like a utility and nobody even has to think about it, you're not going to accomplish much across the ecosystem of what you're trying to accomplish. So my advice to all the other CIOs and VPs of innovation is, hey, stop listening to all the salespeople. Man, they'll confuse the daylights out of you. Hang up the phone, pick a vendor who can do things well. And we found that in Extreme, but we found in other, things too. But I would spend half my life talking with vendors in the promise of something better than what I have than just treating it like I'm turning the lights on. And so that's my advice. Don't overcomplicate it. I'm disheartened that all the network companies have made it so privatized that you can't have one engineer work across multiple networks. That's why you got to stick with one, perfect it so it's lights on or lights off. Hopefully it's lights on all the time, like ours has been for 7 years. I mean, it's an amazing story at ORU to tell people for 15 semesters straight, we have not had one blip across our student base, exams, faculty, classrooms, transactions, all because the Extreme network is that utility that works flawlessly.
Well, glad to hear that, and gosh, I don't want to tempt fate, so I'm going to quickly pivot to Camille and get kind of what advice she gives her clients in terms of how to get started, how to start taking advantage of the insights from the network data.
It's really ironic, but I would say that you start very simply as well. I think what Brenda and Mike have just said, I think resonates very well with me. But one of the things I say to clients, and this is very similar in a way, it's just another way of think about it, is go back to the days and think about time and motion. Think about your people and how they're spending their time and where that friction and inefficiency is, or where things could be improved. People forget these old methods. Some of them still work. I mean, ironically, I'm doing some work right now on 6G. I mean, everyone's talking about 5G. I'm actually looking at 6G, the validation of what that might be. And so to help do that, identify use cases, is a lot of it's about thinking about how we work, how different workers, different students in different localities, how we operate, and as physicality of that, and how that could be improved. And if you do that in an office, in a warehouse, in a stadium, you will find, if you really think about it and you follow those people through their journey, digital and physical, you start identifying where the problems are and you identify what outcomes. And from that, you build this technology solution. And that's the way you need to think about it.
That's good advice. So I'm going to finish up kind of 30 seconds from each of you, and then we'll hand over to Jeevan to kind of close us here. But just where to go for more insights. I tell people you better get read up on AI, ML. There's all sorts of free certifications out there. But Camille, I'm interested what advice you give to your clients in terms of where to go for more insights. Obviously, you tell them you better have an Omdia subscription and talk to you and your colleagues there. But what other advice do you give your clients on where to get more insights in this topic?
Well, I think you need to. The web is a good place to start. Actually, don't ignore that. But I think you should, of course, work with analysts like myself at Omdia. But actually, you should expect more of your existing vendors and service providers. They are the number one point of reference for you, and we've seen that in the pandemic. In terms of enterprises we've spoken to, what was the number one thing your existing suppliers could do for you? The number one thing was actually provide better support. And number two is provide better experience. It wasn't actually about reducing price. So I do think actually expect more, demand more of your existing suppliers. Let them fight for your loyalty through insight. Insight and experience is what you should expect from them, not just technology.
Great. Brenda, I don't know if you've got a quick headline for us on where to go for more insights.
Well, I'm a big fan of universities. There's so many great things going on, just like what we heard with ORU. I'm so impressed. And Wes, you and I had a conversation about this the other day, that especially not the big universities, but the mid-tier universities are kicking butt right now in getting us certified, educated, and you can buy into a program to do that. And I also feel it's really important to really get aligned with outside advisors and business experts like myself or others in the fields that you're looking to generate experience in. Because we're seeing across the board, all the industries, we can bring the best practices to you.
That's great. Good. Thank you. And Mike, final thoughts from you on where you suggest, where you offer your colleagues and peers to go for more insights.
Sure. I mean, one of the reasons we chose Extreme was because if you can handle a football stadium, you can handle a campus, right? It's a common practice. But I get students excited about knowing that you're connected with the NFL, right? It's a win-win. However, outside of that, though, I want to learn from Chick-fil-A how they do traffic, because during the pandemic, we had to do traffic different. I want to go to Amazon and learn how they do logistics differently and treat people like prime customers. So I think Steve Jobs had it right. Pick 4 other industries, learn them well, and it'll apply to your industry far better. But to listen to, excuse my language, know-it-alls within each tech company is a waste of time. So many tech companies have a lot of good salesperson, people that worked at Cisco or worked at IBM. That's good. However, I need somebody who's been a CIO on a campus to listen to. And I'm amazed at how many vendors haven't picked up on that yet, is that hire somebody who's been through the trenches and can help influence the product so that you can influence more of their clients or colleagues across that industry. So that's my advice.
That's great advice. Camille, Brenda, Mike, you guys have been amazing. Jeevan, good luck following this. I'm turning it over to you next to talk about, what our attendees should think about doing on Monday.
Wes, this is incredible. Thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. This is an incredible panel. And it was just amazing to see Michael talk about, how he's looking at it in the school environment. I would give you my own example. There are 2 kids that I have, and they are actually sitting at home right now, getting all of their education over Zoom. So you can imagine, how everything is evolved in this pandemic is essentially with the infinite enterprise, everybody is connected at home using their own networking connections. And essentially, how is an IT CIO, how's an IT leader actually expected to give them the right experience? And the answer. The answer is the data. And again, back to what's the data that you need? So firstly, I think what is fascinating about this panel is how Michael talked about what he cares about. He cares about student engagement. And what are the metrics? What are the data points that he looked at? He looked at students' health, including their connectivity. And in addition to their nodes, he's looking at their fitness and the reaction. Look at that. That's the way we are organizing in the Extreme product line. When we look at the data, we are trying to organize, firstly, what's the problem we are trying to solve? Like, think about John Doerr's book, Measure What Matters. This is back to what Camille talked about. There's so many different products that give you inputs. We are trying to figure out what problem are we trying to solve. We are trying to make sure that the network stays connected, back to staying up for the last 7 years. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that you get the right performance. So while we're all on the Zoom call, how can we all sound great, look great, and stay, optimized? But then back to, I think, one of the points that Brenda Camille pointed about, there's a part of it which is looking back and trying to make sure. There's a part of it about predicting in the future. This is where we are starting to go. How can we make sure that we are starting to predict that a certain part of your network may go bad in the future? This is why, we are sort of saying, look, customers have tens of screens and tens of different alerts happening every single point of time. So what we are starting to do within Extreme Cloud IQ, we are introducing this new product called as, Copilot. Copilot is where, imagine, the example being, if you think about how many people give a call to 911 or sort of emergency services, 99.9% of them are probably false alarms. Wouldn't it be so powerful if you could figure out what really matters to the end customer and just point that out? So this is what we are trying to figure out. So how can we make it so that it's, customer centric? A customer needs to know, in your school, in your hospital, in your environment, this is the normal. The green dot is the normal. And the line that's going across is essentially showing you are in an anomaly mode. How can we make it so that we can speak to a customer in a human language? So even if you are at home trying to monitor a network right now, how can we make it within 1 to 2 minutes, we can show you a video of what are we talking about? What does Wi-Fi capacity mean? I mean, geeks like Camille, you probably know 5G, 6G, who knows, there might be a 7G, but a lot of our customers don't know all that stuff. They just need to know, give me the cliff notes and tell me how to fix it. Do I need to care and how to fix it? So this is why we have like a quick couple minutes of video and then, a knowledge-based article that's pointed in the product itself. So you don't have to Google search through anything, just trying to get an understanding of all of these and just understand. This is where we are going. But back to what I said, every customer is different. We don't know, what outcome they're trying to solve, and we might be a piece of it. This is why Wes and I are such huge fans of, APIs. We want to give you, the customers, data because we are not sure what outcome you're trying to achieve. This is why we are huge fans of Open API, just opening up all your data to you, the customers, or our MSP partners, so that you can solve our customers' problems much more simply. So this is where, our Copilot is trying to say this. And I can't remember, again, Brenda, I think you mentioned this. There is so much noise out there, right? I mean, there's so many different tools providing dings, alerts, alarms, right? How can we make it so that we're just telling you what matters? And next time when you say dismiss, we're going to sort of, not bother you anymore with the same alerts, right? That is fundamental for us within the product. So as a product guy, I live and die by sort of, how many people actually use my products. When you ask me what is my success metric, I'm happy when my customers are using my product. I look at the screens, I monitor how many people are doing it. And then again, we're trying to make sure that, we reduce the risk, whether it's security risk, network downtime risk, before any of your metrics that you measure, are crossed. And last but not the least, for us, a lot of people say, if my network is up, everything is great. And that's really where anytime there's an issue, we are trying to resolve it as quickly as possible for you. And with that, I wanted to sort of hand it back to you, Wes. Any thoughts, comments?
No, I'm just going to close out today. I mean, as you can take away, this is a topic that Jeevan and I are really, really passionate about, which is how do we help our customers unlock their network data to deliver a better patient, student, constituent, customer experience. And really, we had three of the best people on the planet to join us today in Camille, Brenda, and Mike. And so, Jeevan, I say thank you to you, and to them, I say we are really grateful. And to those watching, thank you for joining us today. You can reach any of us on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for joining Connect this spring.